Hello everyone. Back again with film recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the thriller films from 2022, titled Northspur. Before we get to the storyline, I'd like to wish everyone a happy and great day. Without further ado, let's get straight to the storyline. The prologue of the movie reveals that a hostile superpower launched a deadly attack on Oceania. It released a powerful electromagnetic pulse, wiping out electricity in all parts of the continent. An air pathogen was also released, killing most of the humans residing there. A full-on invasion was fortunately stopped by another superpower, but the damage on the continent has already been done. It has been 2 years since the incident, and now, New Zealand has become a dangerous place to live in due to the scarcity of supplies. A small valley in New Zealand has been completely overrun by vegetation and greenery. A solitary man named Kellen is seen cycling through the desolate roads, and there's not even a motor vehicle in sight. It is evident that the country's government has collapsed, and now the remaining residents are left to fend off on their own. Soon after, Kellen comes across a bunch of dangerous-looking men with weapons in their hands. They have just killed an intruder who was perhaps trying to steal something. Kellen is allowed to pass through as he just lives nearby and is not dangerous. However, the men warn him that the valley is not safe anymore because the bad people have arrived. In the next scene, Kellen reaches home with some supplies, where he is greeted by his beautiful wife, Melinda. She is very happy to see him because going out has become extremely dangerous these days. Later, as he is working in the field, he spots a fat stranger coming towards the house. Kellen quickly brings out his pistol and fires a warning shot in the air, and the stranger eventually leaves the place. Melinda then asks her husband why he didn't just shoot the man, but Kellen, being a non-violent person, refuses to kill anyone. The next morning, 2 more intruders arrive at their property, but Kellen still doesn't retaliate. He simply points his gun at them and sends them away. On the other hand, as Melinda is working in the field, she accidentally gets her leg scratched with a rusty tin sheet. She gets panicked and rushes inside the house. Unfortunately, in the middle of the night, Melinda appears to be in a lot of pain because of the wound. It has now become infected and swollen to the point that she requires immediate medical assistance. Melinda soon passes out due to anaphylactic shock, but Kellen manages to resuscitate her by administering her with an adrenaline shot. The next morning, while Melinda is resting, Kellen goes through a book to find possible cures for her, but he learns that the situation is very critical. He reveals to his wife that the pathogen, which was released 2 years ago, TK549, affects some more than others. The wound on Melinda's leg has opened gates for the pathogen to enter her body and harm her. She can have antibiotics and live for now, but for her to have a realistic chance at surviving, they need injectable trimoxazole shots, and Kellen assures Melinda that he'll find those shots. Following this, we are introduced to an old man named Summers, who resides in the same valley. Despite living alone, he is heavily prepared to combat the outsiders with his arsenal of weapons and supplies. When 2 strangers step foot onto his property, he injures them with his booby traps. Then, without any hesitation,
No, please, no!
On the other hand, Kellen makes the tough decision to leave home, so that he can find the trimoxazole shots. He hands Melinda a gun for protection, bids her goodbye, and then departs on his bicycle. Along the way, he must show others that he is not a threat, so that they do not attack him. After a while of traveling, he arrives at a location where there are some houses. Kellen thinks of approaching them, but he quickly changes his mind when he sees all of them are on high alert, guarding their homes against hostile intruders. On walking a bit further, he arrives at a small cabin which he used to regularly visit when he was a kid. When he reaches the door, he tries knocking, but there is no response. So, he lets himself in, and then Kellen notices a large collection of rifles, but then, he is confronted by the owner at the door. Turns out it is none other than Summers' cabin. Seeing a gun pointed at him, Kellen explains that he is unarmed and that he came here to get medicine for his sick wife. Summers then asks Kellen how he walked through the only path where there are no hidden mines, so the latter says that he used to come to this place very often during childhood. Elsewhere, Melinda is alone at home when she hears someone enter their property. It is actually the same fat man who had come here earlier. Melinda beats the shit out of him, and gets a good chance to shoot him dead, but she puts the gun down. She then wheelbarrows the knocked out man, and drops him in the nearby field. Back at the cabin, as the two men are talking, some intruders suddenly arrive outside. They throw Molotovs at the cabin, aiming to burn it down. The old man quickly grabs a gun and gives one to Kellen as well. Summers then engages in a shootout with the strangers, and he asks Kellen to get the fire extinguisher pump. Despite the dangerous situation, Kellen heroically activates the pump, which helps him put out the fire. Seeing that their plan has failed, the intruders retreat back into the woods. Kellen then decides to leave, not wanting to risk his life anymore, but the old man stops him. He reveals that he has the trimoxazole shots in his safe, and he can give it to him. But for that, Kellen has to help him safeguard the cabin for a week. Kellen doesn't want to be away from his wife for an entire week, but he's also not sure if he can find the shots elsewhere, so he agrees to the offer. He asks Summers who they're defending the cabin against. The old man replies that he angered some people in Blackton, and they'll be coming for revenge soon. He then takes the boy outside, and briefs him about the different traps he has set up here. Starting from that moment, Kellen gets straight to work. He places some more traps around the periphery, and fixes the solar panel that had been damaged. He even goes as far as installing a CCTV camera, so that they can keep an eye on the intruders. In the next scene, we are introduced to a cruel and psychotic gang leader named Shell. Turns out she is going to attack Summers' house to get something from him. One of her goons reveals that the old man is fully stacked, while the other says he's got a friend now. Regardless, Shell is not intimidated at all, and she is confident that she can defeat them. It is day 2 of Kellen's stay at the cabin. While he and Summers are out hunting for food, they are suddenly attacked by 2 intruders. The old man uses his survival instincts to immediately counter one of the men, and bashes his head repeatedly with a rock. Summers then grabs his gun and points it at the other intruder, but Kellen stops him from shooting. He believes that they should let the man go. Seeing the intruder almost kill Kellen, Summers bludgeons the intruder to death. Here Summers asserts that in this world, if one doesn't toughen up, they are as good as dead. Later, as they are heading back to the cabin, Kellen spots a bearded old man in the woods, and he experiences some painful memories from the past. Once back at the cabin, Summers describes the dangers they'll be facing this week. He is anticipating an attack from the gang leader, Shell, as she's sick and looking for the same medication. Furthermore, he has beef with some poachers down the lake, so they might launch an attack too. Hearing all this, Kellen is infuriated because he had no idea they were in such danger.
And see.
In the morning hours of day 3, he finally wakes up from his slumber. Summers warns him not to try anything stupid again, or else he'll regret it. Now that Kellen knows a lot of enemies are coming for them, he starts reinforcing the cabin. He sets up some further booby traps, boards the doors and windows, and makes strategic holes from where they can fire their weapons. On the other hand, Melinda hears someone enter the house again. She eventually corners the intruder, and to her utmost shock, it is a scared little girl named Tia, who has come looking for her. After giving her an apple, she inquires about what happened. Tia explains that her parents were attacked, and in her dying moments, her mom told her to find Melinda. Hearing this, Melinda realizes that Tia is her old friend's daughter, who lived a few blocks away. That night, Melinda realizes that she only has a few antibiotic pills left. Day 4, the men are greeted by a swarm of drones flying above the cabin. Summers realizes that they are the poachers, who are deploying drones to drop grenades on the field so that they can bypass the mines. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Kellen quickly retrieves a rifle, and starts shooting at the drones. Using his impeccable skills, he takes every single one of them with the utmost precision. This forces the poachers to hastily run away from there. Back at Melinda's residence, she and Tia are playing in the garden when an intruder suddenly shows up. He threatens to cause harm, but Melinda manages to scare him away by firing a warning shot. Despite the danger being averted for now, she knows that she doesn't have much time left. At the cabin, when asked about his parents, Kellen reveals that he hasn't seen his father in a long time. Dad actually blames him for his mother's death, and regards him as useless. As for Summers, it is revealed that he lost his wife and son a while back. The movie then cuts to Shell's office, where the former deputy mayor is brought in a beaten-up state. Turns out the man used to be her babysitter, and he took good care of her, and she used to like him. However, he never intervened when Shell was assaulted by her own father. The regular beatings she endured during her childhood has shaped her into the person she has become now. On day 5, as Kellen is working in the field, he spots movement behind the house. He quickly grabs his gun and fires warning shots, but Summers stops him before the matter can escalate. Then, a scared-looking boy named Robbie comes out, and the old man reveals that he rescued the boy from the locked-in gang, and has been taking care of him ever since. Robbie hid in the fallback cabinet as soon as Kellen arrived. The boy was regularly beaten by the gang members, so he has a difficult time trusting people. The next morning on day 6, the men learn that a couple of intruders are stealing their veggies, so they grab their weapons to confront them. Summers once again finishes off his target, but Kellen hesitates because of his philosophy involving nonviolence. Luckily, the old man kills the second intruder as well. Later, Kellen and Robbie spot the same bearded old man in the woods. The two then head inside the cabin, where Robbie finally opens up about his past. He reveals that the locked-in gang leader regularly beat him up and tormented him for several months. That night, we see Melinda in a very frail state as the antibiotics have been exhausted. Tia suddenly says that she's hearing noises from outside, but Melinda passes out on the floor. At this moment, the fat intruder from earlier enters the house, so Tia makes a run for it. The panicked little girl goes to a room to hide, but the man eventually finds her. Luckily, before he can harm her, Melinda shows up from behind and knocks him out. She again disposes of him in the field, but refrains from killing him. Seeing her so weak, the man warns that he will come for her again. Day 7, it is the final day that Kellen has to stay in this cabin. As he and Summers are talking, the locked-in gang suddenly shows up outside. Their leader, Green, demands that Robbie be returned, or else they will launch an attack. Summers obviously refuses, so he sends the boy down to the cabinet and braces for a fight. The locked-in gang members use a large tank as a shield to fire inside the cabin, and ladders to get over the track. A fierce battle ensues between the two parties, and Summers are seriously outnumbered, but they aren't going to give up so easily. Soon it becomes dark, and as Melinda and Tia are about to sleep, the annoying fat man once again shows up. But this time, Melinda shows no mercy, and strikes him repeatedly, until he finally passes away. Back at the cabin, the war is still raging on. Our heroes have managed to kill a few bad guys, but it's not enough. The locked-ins just keep on coming one after another. At one point, Summers is shot in the arm, but he keeps on going. As all of this is happening, the gang leader, Green, sneaks inside the fallback cabinet through the outer entrance. He tapes a terrified Robbie's mouth, and then makes his way inside the cabin, taking the two by complete surprise. At first, he knocks out Summers, and then holds Kellen at gunpoint. As the two talk, it is shockingly revealed that Green is none other than Kellen's dad. He taunts his son for being weak and claims that he could never become a man. It is evident that the two absolutely hate each other. Green then proceeds to finish him off, but just then, Kellen activates a switch, which drops a net on his dad. The danger is finally averted, while the remaining gang members try to storm inside the cabin, but Summers neutralizes them by pouring acid from the roof. This leaves them screaming for help. Later, Kellen talks to his dad. It is a heated conversation where both blame each other for Mom's death. Here Green launches a sudden attack on Kellen. Summers arrives to help, but it is too late as Green has already managed to escape through the cabinet. An angry Summers then heads outside, and shoots all the struggling gang members to death. He calls it mercy killing rather than vengeance. The next morning, it is the 8th day, and Kellen's task is officially over, so Summers hands him the medication and allows him to leave. He also requests Kellen to take Robbie with him, as the boy can have a better future there. Both of them are hesitant to leave the old man alone, but after some convincing, they agree. A few hours later, Kellen finally arrives home, where he is given a special welcome by Tia.
Hey, don't shoot.
She fires a warning shot at him, thinking he's an intruder. Kellen then heads straight to his wife's room, where he finds her lying unconscious on her bed. Without wasting any time, he administers her with a shot, and it seems like Melinda has already passed away. But to everyone's delight, she suddenly comes to life. Later, the couple introduces the new kids to each other, and Kellen abruptly says that he has to go back to the old man who gave him these drugs. He just cannot leave him alone as the threat is looming very near. In the next scene, we see a horde of Shell's gang members heading towards Summer's cabin. Inside the cabin, Summers has become incredibly weak due to the gunshot wound on his arm. He almost passes out on the floor, but Kellen arrives at the same time and helps him. He then administers the old man with a shot, bringing all his energy back. After this, the two brace for the deadly battle that is coming towards their way. The first round of enemies arrive via parachutes, bypassing the traps, and they land straight on the cabin's roof. But Summers quickly takes care of them by electrocuting the roof. The gang leader, Shell, then speaks on a microphone. She warns the old man to hand her the medications she needs, or else she'll charge at them. At this moment, Summers reveals a shocking truth to Kellen. Shell is actually his own daughter, and they have been at odds because of something he did in the past. Summers was a drunkard back then, and he was abusive to both his wife and daughter. He realized his mistake years later and tried to reconcile with Shell, but she always refused to see him. Moments later, the goons escalate their attack by firing intensively. Several members also charge at the cabin, but the guys inside manage to gun them down. One of them eventually manages to reach the cabin, but even he isn't able to take down the resilient duo. Kellen strikes him with a wooden log, and bashes his head repeatedly until he dies. On the other hand, we see that a concerned Melinda is heading to the cabin to help her husband. She is barely able to walk because of the wound. Back at the cabin, Shell herself approaches her dad to ask for the medication. She uses a metal detector to avoid all the traps that have been planted. Even Green shows up to settle matters with his son, while Shell reveals that the guys who got electrocuted on the roof earlier were actually wearing rubber boots. Here they immediately come to life, and attack our heroes. An intense fight ensues, but Kellen manages to finish them off by activating a trap, which stabs them from multiple angles. Despite this, Shell still manages to hold the two at gunpoint. She demands the medications, but Summers reveals that he's already given them to someone else. Enraged, she orders her assistant to kill her father. But at this pivotal moment, Melinda emerges from the underground cabinet and shoots the assistant dead. Then, Summers decides to kill Green with a bullet to the head while Kellen electrocutes Shell with a taser. With this, the madness is finally over and the group has an emotional reunion, with Robbie also present. Summers bids an emotional goodbye to the family, as he is going to live somewhere else now. Kellen, Melinda, and Robbie then head home. Afterwards, Kellen plants many kinds of traps around his house after learning them from Summers, and the movie ends where they start living happy life together as a new family. Okay guys, thanks for watching. See you again in the next video.